All right, so getting back to the kings, well, just as briefly as you can put it, as concisely as you can, why might it be important to memorize the kings list? Yeah, there's really nothing more important than the Word of God. And, the Word of God has been spoken to us. It's divine, infallible, it's inerrant, perfect, it's life-giving, and it's our rule of faith and life. And so we want to know and love our God in that Word on His terms, and thus the story is the way that we come to know Him. Sure, we draw doctrine from the story, but it is a story. And so we want to fill our hearts and our minds with the story, and the more you have that story in your heart, in your mind, the more that you'll see Him in Christ as a born-again person. Right? So these are, the story really revolves around the promised seed who's going to come through Abraham, and then more narrowly through the 12 tribes that are sons of Abraham, through Jacob, Isaac and Jacob, and then through which king? Well, through the tribe of Judah. Very good. And what king? David. Right. Judah, this is entirely the line of David from the time that Solomon died, 931, right? Saul comes to power in the United Kingdom. You have 3 kings that reign for 40 years each, a biblical generation, around 1050, 40. Solomon dies around 931, and that sets off civil war, which results in a split, northern kingdom, southern kingdom. I'm only putting the southern from left to right because we did this first. I taught you this first because I think it's easier. After they split into these 2 kingdoms, you have David's house persists. God's faithfulness is displayed in the fact that David's house persists. How many good kings were there? 8 out of how many total kings? There were 19 and 20, good, if you count the usurper woman, right, who was a mother of one of David's sons, one of the kings. So you have 20 rulers, 19 kings, 8 good ones, God's generous declaration that they did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. They basically kept the covenant. The northern kingdom, not David's line. Actually, there are 5, or depending upon how you calculate it, 6 dynasties, 6 different houses of kings. Much more volatility over a much shorter period of time. This lasted from 931 to 586 BC when Babylon conquered Jerusalem and the kingdom of Judah. You know how long this lasted? From 931 to, good, 722 BC when Assyria conquered what capital? Samaria, yep, the capital of the northern kingdom. Just as God had promised in Isaiah. Right? You could see that. If you learn these kings, they become pegs to hang the story details on. You get these mental pegs, now you can fill out the story. And even think of the relationship between these brothers. Right? These are related, and there's many overlaps in the story and their dealings with each other. So this is a much shorter history, but the same number of kings. This only goes to 722 BC, right? 931 to 722 BC. And this one goes from 931 to, what did I say? 586 BC. These are good to commit to your memory, right? So 8 good kings. How many good kings in the north? 0, right? How many dynasties did I say? 5 or 6, depending upon how you think of it, right? How many here? Just David's family and 1 usurper. All right, let's recap Judah real quick. Have you been able to commit this to memory? We don't want to spend too much time on the recap, but we are going to spend a significant amount of time. I don't want to go too far. You wrote it down? Have any of you worked on trying to memorize this? I want to encourage you. This will be invaluable in your studies to get this in your mind. Because when you're meditating on the Word, you won't have to spend as much time flipping around, going online. You'll have these connections, and you'll start to connect more little subdots, right? Subordinate details. And the more you do that, it's like lights go on, right? You see the beauty, the glory of God in the story. So who is the first king in each one? After Solomon, who is Solomon's son in Judah? Right. Who was the usurper that God gave 10 kingdoms to in the north? Right. It helps that they have similar names, right? I want to help you to memorize this as much as I can. So Rehoboam, Abijah. Any good kings yet? No. Who is the first good king? Yes, so you have these two A's in a row. Rah! And then a very famous one, I told you we named a cardinal in our family after him, Jehoshaphat, right? Two good kings, 2 of the 8, right there, boom. So that helps me to remember, right? The 2 and then the 2. And then Jehoshaphat's son is another J. Jehoram. Now, right away, we have a pattern. You see there's going to be overlap between the names of these kings. There's a Jehoram, who is also, do you know what his shortened name is? Joram. Sometimes they use the other name to differentiate them. A lot of times you'll hear the one in the north is Joram, but it's really just Jehoram. They're related. There's a crossover here where you see relationship to Ahab. So then you have, after Jehoram, you have the first, I like to think for a memory device, Ahaziah and Ahaz. Ahaziah or Ahaz. Ahaziah is first. You're going to have in the northern kingdom a Jehoram and an Ahaziah, but they're flipped. Ahaziah and then Jehoram is going to come up. And I'll show you that in a moment. So these are good kings or bad kings? Right, and that leads, Ahaziah leads to Athaliah, the usurper woman, right? After he's killed by who in the northern kingdom? He's visiting his cousin in the northern kingdom, and God purges the family, the line, of Omri. Jehu kills him, right? Athaliah takes that advantage. She kills a bunch of the sons, trying to wipe out the line to secure her power. Yeah, he was after the king of the north, and he just happened to be visiting, and it was a good opportunity to kill another wicked king, I think. Yeah, one way of thinking about it. If I remember rightly, yeah, he's visiting, but Jehu was sent by Elijah at the order of God to wipe out the house of Omri, which we're going to see in a moment. So then you have 4 good kings. This is a way of memorizing this, right? I kind of think of, 2 bad, 2 good. The son Jehoram, who there's a Jehoram and an Ahaziah in the north, but it's Ahaziah Jehoram when you get over here. So that's a memory help to think that these 2 are repeated but flipped, and they're related. And then Athaliah, and then 4 good kings. Do you remember who the 3 other good kings are? They're bookmarked, kind of bookended by 2 J's. And they're similar names. Yeah, Amaziah. I misspelled that. It's 2 Z's, sorry. A-M-A-Z-Z-I-A. Remember, whenever you have the ah at the end, it's like Yah, shortened for Jehovah or Yahweh. Uzziah. This is the king that was king who died when Isaiah started his ministry in 740 BC. That's a good thing to remember. Anybody remember his other name? Azariah. Really good to meditate on these. Like, write the list down and think of the memory devices that help you best. Maybe mine don't help you well, but yours, you'll come up with your own. And just write it down several times until you get it in your mind. Right? Jotham. And then that leads us, this makes it easier for me, to another Ahaziah. Instead of Ahaziah, it's just Ahaz, right? And then Ahaz, who's the king during the Syro-Ephraimite crisis, where God ends up giving the sign of the virgin birth through Isaiah. Ahaz then gives birth to one of the greatest kings. Who's that? A-H, Hezekiah. Another good king, right? So we got 4, 5, 6, 7 good kings. We have how many left? One more. Did Hezekiah give birth to a good king? No. So Manasseh was really bad, right? And then who's his son? Amon, good. And then who's the good king that comes after these 2 bad kings? Josiah. Now this is the part that you really need to work on memorizing. At least for me, it was a little tricky, but God in his providence gave us a nice, easy memory device, at least with the pattern of years, right? There's 3 months, then this one reigns 11 years, then this one reigns 3 months. What am I going to say? This one reigns 11 years. That's a big help. So if you remember these last 5 kings and kind of what happens with them at the end of the southern kingdom, it'll help you in general. So Jehoahaz, who's also known as Shallum, and there's a Shallum and a Jehoahaz in the north. We talked about how he was taken to captivity where? Egypt. Egypt, and then Egypt sets up Jehoiakim, changed his name from what? Eliakim. Right? These are sons of Josiah. Jehoiachin is a grandson. Jehoiachin is the one who's also Jeconiah or Coniah, who's taken off into bondage where? Yeah, Babylon. And then Zedekiah is the one who has his eyes gouged out after Nebuchadnezzar kills his sons and seemingly extinguishes the line of David. Jehoiachin's the one who, when he's in bondage in Babylon, God brings him out of the prison cell and brings him to the king's table, a sign of his ongoing faithfulness to the promise and the covenant in the line of David. He's also the grandfather of what returnee who becomes an important type of Christ, an important man in the line of David, who leads the returnees, the remnant from exile. Zerubbabel. Ezra's the next century. Yeah, Zerubbabel. This story never changes. We really want to get this in our mind and be good biblical thinkers and dreamers, meditators, right? We want to meditate on, love the Lord in this story. And then we'll be better teachers to our family and to other people who are in our sphere of opportunity to make disciples. Jehoiachin is also Jeconiah. It's the same meaning, or Coniah. Yeah, sure, absolutely. And then Jeroboam, it helps me to remember that he's Jeroboam 1, right? What does that presuppose? That there's at least, right, a Jeroboam 2. Right, so there's a Jeroboam 1, and then the way I memorized this, do you remember the strange fire sons? The sons of Aaron, the first high priest, who offered sacrifice, incense, not according to the law of God. They were arrogant. They were haughty and thought that they could do as their own hearts imagined. And so I just remember Jeroboam 1, and then Nadab and Abihu, right? So remember Jeroboam 1, of course, the one who offered the strange worship of the golden cows, right? He made golden calves in the 2 temples that he created, 2 counterfeit, competing rival temples to Jerusalem in Dan in the north and Bethel in the south, far north, far south, trying to keep people distracted and away from Jerusalem. So Jeroboam 1 has Nadab as a son. So I think of this. This will help you. There's 2. Here's the 5 dynasties, and I'll tell you in a minute about how you might conceive of 6. But this helps me. So break it up into 2, a quick 1, like a crazy quick 1, and then the 2 big houses. The first one is 4, and then the next one is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at the end, like the end of Judah, you want to remember a volatile, kind of breakneck, crazy time of 5. You can call them the usurper assassin kings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And really in the whole history here, all of these switchovers from dynasty to dynasty to dynasty, right? These are not all, none of these are sons of David, but they're not even sons of Jeroboam. These are different dynasties, if you can call them that. They all come about through intrigue, murder, violence, overthrow. There's usurpation, right? They assassinate each other. So Nadab is assassinated. I remember it like this. Nadab was bashed by Baasha. Baasha. I say it that way so I remember 2 A's. Baasha. And Baasha assassinated Nadab. He bashed him just like David bashed Goliath in the valley of... Another thing that's a good thing to remember was in the valley of Elah. You want to really work on the story. These are good pegs. David bashed Goliath in the valley of Elah. Elah was then killed by a guy who was king for only a quick moment, I think zip like Zimri. Do you know how long he was king? I believe it was 7 days, like the creation week. That's what you get when you come to power through murder and intrigue and deception and lies and evil, right? Not by God's calling. So Zimri, this makes it easy. So who's the king of the first great house in the north? There's only 2 great houses, and the 2 of the heads, the fathers, the patriarchs, should be easy to remember. The one is, it's similar to Zimri. Yeah, the house of Omri. And who was commissioned by God, commanded by God to wipe out the house of Omri? Yeah, so logically, Jehu. And God rewarded him by giving him a dynasty, a big dynasty. So there are 5 here for Jehu, more than Omri. Omri had maybe the most famous wicked son in the Bible of the kings. He did infamously, he battled with Elijah. He called him a troubler of Israel. Yeah. Ahab. You think of the one who chased the white whale in Moby Dick, right? Ahab. And then Ahab, you would not be surprised at all. Now I remember the rest of his house by the fact that Jehu wiped them out. And remember, these 2 sons are related to these 2 sons. Jehoram, or Joram is for short, and Ahaziah. Remember, I said that these 2 names are back to back in the northern kingdom also. And remember, Ahaziah was killed by Jehu. So who would you guess, if they have the same names, was killed by Jehu in the north at the same time his cousin Ahaziah was killed? Jehoram was killed by Jehu, shortened by Joram. So remember these by house. Remember, Omri had the very wicked son Ahab. He named his son Ahaziah. Basically, this Ahaziah is his nephew, Ahab's nephew. See how it's Ahaziah and Jehoram? This is Ahaziah and Jehoram. But it's flipped. Jehoram, Ahaziah, Ahaziah, Jehoram. Right there, this is like uncle and nephew kind of thing. Everybody follow that? You see, Joram is the name that he's often called by, but that's just a shortened version of Jehoram. It's an alternate version of Jehoram. So Jehu wipes out his house, kills Jehoram, kills Ahaziah, who's visiting, and that's why the wicked queen usurper Athaliah had an opportunity to come to power. And the maidservant preserved the little child, Joash, who later would come. Keep that in mind, there's another Joash. But remember, they have alternate names. In Hebrew, there's different ways of saying the same meaning. Not different from English, really. Similar in a certain way. Jehu, I remember this, right? There's 2 big houses, 4 and 5. I always think of George Foreman, who named all of his kids George, Georgina, Georgette, George, Georgie. Like 30 kids. Not really. Like maybe 10 or 7. I don't know. But he also was on a little bit of an ego trip maybe and had a bunch of J's. I'm kidding, but it helps me to remember. You're going to just put in there J, 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 and then you think like from A through J to Z, and it's going to end with a kind of a random Zechariah. So you just got to know, you got to remember, who are these J's? The first one, I remember this because I always think, oh, after Jehu, you have the J like Josiah's J. Josiah had the son Jehoahaz. Well, so did Jehu. Jehu, Jehoahaz, Josiah, Jehoahaz. And then another Jehoash. What do you think that shortened name might be? Joash. Remember, there's a king, good King Joash in the south. The first of the 4 good kings after Athaliah. You see that? His name also is basically Jehoash. But this, if you call him Jehoash and him Joash, I think it helps to distinguish them. And then the last one, we're coming down the stretch here with the last of the J's. Remember what I said at the beginning. Jeroboam 1 presupposes something. Yeah, this is like the last great king of Jehu's dynasty. Actually, he had probably one of the arguably greatest kingdom. He's the one that Jonah came to his court. And God said, I'm going to restore your boundaries to the times of Solomon. And so he won all these victories and restored the boundaries and had a massive, powerful kingdom, prosperity, 40 years, a generation of prosperity. And God was teaching us through that. Do not interpret your life through your circumstances, right? Through your circumstances. You're not blessed because of material blessing. Interpret your life through what standard? The Word, right? And they weren't obeying God. They wrongly thought in the northern kingdom that God was with them, even though they were idolaters, using the name Yahweh in a wicked way, incorporating him into their pagan fertility cult, false worship. So Jeroboam, number 2, and the final Jeroboam. So then, like I said, you got to remember these last ones, right? These last ones. I remember it this way. Jehu's, you see, it's not that big. It's just 2, 2, 1, 4, 5. Remember? 2, 2, 1, 4, 5. And this is 1 week, literally. And then you have 5 usurpers, assassin kings. And I remember this. This is the downward spiral at the very end. Kind of like after Josiah, God was like, I've had enough at 609 BC. Josiah dies in the Battle of Megiddo. And then you have this volatile time with these 4 kings. If you remember this volatile time and some key details, everything else on here, I think, tends to be a lot easier. This is the hardest part. And here, I think, is the hardest because it's like 5, quick, messy, questionable. So I remember this. God now is saying, I've had enough. It's time for retribution. It's time for payback. And the word shalom, what does that mean in Hebrew? Right? There's a certain way it can be used in Hebrew as a verb, and a certain way it's used where it can mean like to make restitution, right? To make whole, to like pay back. So it can mean retribution in this form, shalom. That actually also happens to be a nickname or another name of this Jehoahaz. Not to confuse you, but I mean, this is in the Bible. And again, we're never going to transition to studying Moby Dick, Lord willing. Lord, if that ever happens, remove me speedily. Like Jehu even. Like get a big bow right between the shoulder blades. Shalom, which means retribution. So then Shallum, who killed Zechariah, and then I believe he's killed by Menahem. And Menahem, this is the one where it's like a debate, can you call this a dynasty? I believe that he ruled for maybe might have been 8 or 11 years, I forget off the top of my head, but then only for 2 years, his son, Pekahiah, right? If you remember, these two are actually related. So some people say this is the 6th house. What's that? Yeah. Pekahiah. I don't know. I forget the word exactly. It reminds me of like a Stillwater, Creedence Stillwater. What's the name of that band? Creedence Clearwater Revival. That's what it is. Yeah, they have a song, and there's a word. He's got a few. There's some of these old rock and roll songs have some lines where they're memorable lines, but I don't even know what they're saying. We need you to higher, like Menahem Pekahiah. Shalom, Menahem, Pekahiah. And then this makes it mercifully easier on us, in my opinion. Pekah. He's the son of Remaliah. Do you remember that title? When does God call someone the son of Remaliah? Yeah, during the Syro-Ephraimite crisis, that results in Isaiah giving which king here in the north a sign that he didn't want. He was too falsely pious to take a sign. So God's like, okay, I'll give you a sign. The sign is the child born of a virgin who's going to be God with us, Emmanuel. Who? Ahaz, right. So at the time Ahaz is king, there's this crisis where in the north you have the king of Syria, who's Rezin, is conspiring with Pekah, the son of Remaliah, who's the king in the north of the northern kingdom, Israel. They want to replace Ahaz with a puppet governor or king of Judah named Tabeel. And do you remember why? You remember who they were trying to join forces to stave off? No, the mighty Assyrian Empire. Right? They were trying to fight off the Assyrians, and Ahaz thought it was a better idea to buy off the Assyrians than to fight with them. It was the Neo-Assyrian Empire on the rise. And so they would come ultimately, just as God had promised, in a very short time after Isaiah prophesied, that these two, he calls them like firebrands. They're like coals in the fire. They're already toast. He's like, by the time that a child is able to know the good from the wrong, kind of playing off of the virgin birth prophecy, it's like by that time, these pieces of hot embers will be toast. And they were. And shortly after that, remember, Isaiah's ministry only starts in 740 BC, during the time of Uzziah, also aka Azariah. So 740 BC, it's a short time, I don't know exactly what year he prophesied that, but it wasn't much before. 732 BC is the fall of Syria. So the Syrian kingdom is wiped out. What was the capital of Syria? Yeah, Damascus falls in 732 BC, just as God was threatening, promising. And then 10 short years later, 722 BC, you have this kingdom fall. And who was the last king when this firebrand was taken out? Hoshea. Yep. So if you remember these, remember like the 4 J's of Jehu's dynasty end with a Z. And remember, there's a lot of A's and Z's. Before the run of 5 J's, you have Ahaziah, the son of Ahab. So I tend to think A and then the J's through Z, A through Z, right? And then after that, you just got to remember, Shalom, retribution, like Shalom, Menahem and his son Pekahiah, and then a similar name, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and then Hoshea. Hoshea is the last here. Zedekiah is the last here, right? And this, I believe, means Yahweh saves. Yeah, it's like Joshua, Yehoshua, Hoshea, Hosea, Yeshua, Jesus' name. They're all similar, and they mean kind of the same thing. He saves, Yahweh is salvation. And Zedekiah, anybody know what that means? Zedek, Yahweh. Zedek is like righteousness, and the Yah is always Jehovah, or short for Jehovah. Yeah, so Jehovah's righteousness, Jehovah is my righteousness, something like that. So there you have it. I hope this helps you to think 2, 2, right? I try to break it up into manageable parts. 2, 2, 1, and then the big houses, 4 or 5, and then 5 assassin usurpers. I hope that's helpful. Does anybody, we're almost done. We have very little time, but does anybody you can ask a question or make a statement? Yeah, because they're wicked. Remember, 0 kings did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. 0 good kings. 0, 0, 0. Here there were 8, right? You get 8. Let me take a picture of this. Clear as mud? Well, I hope this helps, just to see kind of how I think to remember it. And you could create your own memory devices. my main concern, in addition to kind of helping you, is just kind of motivating you. I want to stimulate an interest in knowing these. These are important to know. Of course, you should know the books of the Bible. You should know, the dating of these kings when it was a united kingdom or monarchy, and you should know the date when the northern kingdom fell, Jerusalem, and the southern kingdom before it, Samaria. It's good to, you could, always you remember who was the first king, who was the last king, but I really think it's not too bad it's not that many, especially if you group them. If you group them and you recognize similarities, or you kind of connect them to key parts of the story, you want this world to light up. You want to connect the dots. Very important. And so part of the way I break up the south of Judah, is I think in terms of the good kings, and I fill in the bad kings around them, right? So you just got to get started. Once you get started, I think, and also you might have noticed, I pointed it out, I use Ahaz, Ahaziah. Those are memorable names, evil kings and good kings that are memorable, right? Like, these are not super memorable, maybe other than Uzziah, but if you can remember that, look, after you have the two bad, two good, one very famous, then Jehoram, Ahaziah, just like you have Ahaziah, Jehoram. And you say, oh, those are the ones that led to the purging by Jehu. Then you say, oh, Athaliah, that's when there was an opening for the woman to come in, because Ahaziah was killed when he was visiting his cousin in the north. Jehoram, same name as his dad, right? He was visiting his cousin, the nephew of this guy, I think. And Athaliah was daughter. I might get some of these details a little off. It's off the top of my head, but his daughter, this is daughter to Ahab, and it might have been Jezebel. At least I know for sure it was Ahab. And then, the two J's bookend the four good kings. So two good kings, and then this little segment where you think in terms of Jehoram and Ahaziah and the woman, Athaliah. And then, Joash was preserved by the maidservant, and that gets you started. You say, I got a J there. It's got to put another J at the other end of the four, and you got to fill these out. And it's two Zias, right? Two Zias, Uzziah, Amaziah. And then another Ahaz, another famous or infamous bad king. You think out of Ahaz, connects to which major prophet? No. That was a good guess, because Ahaziah in the north, right? This one connects to Isaiah, right? Isaiah. And you think Ahaz, and then Hezekiah, who was delivered by the Lord when he was surrounded in Jerusalem in 701 BC by Assyria. You think Hezekiah. From Ahaz, if you connect Ahaz and Hezekiah, that gets you to the seventh good king. You follow that? And then you just got to know, who are Hezekiah's two wicked sons? Two really wicked sons. And Manasseh ruled for a long time. And then, so I think Hezekiah and the Ma, right? Ma, Manasseh, Ammon. And then the last good king, Josiah. That gets you all the way to 16. After the last good king, you just got to remember the downward spiral, the volatile ending in judgment. These four kings, and I told you a pattern that'll help you. 3, 11, 3 months, 11 years, right? 3 months, 11 years, 3 months, 11 years. And they're all similar names, which can be bad or good, but once you get started, right? Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim. I always think it goes out of alphabetical order. Instead of the C coming first, it's the K coming first. That helps me. That might not help you, but you have to find the things that help you. And if you just do this a few times, write it out. Like I take a piece of paper and I'll make 20 rows, and then I'll do like 6 columns on an 8 by 11, and I'll fill it out. And once you get it in your head, then you just practice it once in a while. Make sure you still have it. And as you're reading the Bible, they start to light up. And then it'll become easier. If you're in the Bible all the time, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get a hold of this. It's the guys who are like partial students. They like come and go from the Bible. This is impossible. But if you're in the Bible all the time, it's just like if you're a mechanic, you remember stuff about engines. You're in the engines all the time. It's not a big deal. And eventually you're like, oh, that's nothing. Just like the mechanic looks at something that you see as an impossible problem. He's like, oh, that's basic mechanic, engine repair. Basic. This can become basic to you. You see, with these, how do I organize these as we close? Yeah, the 5 dynasties. And it's not so hard. I mean, it's 19, and you just got to remember 2, 2, 1, 4, 5, and then the 5 assassins. So 2, 2, 1, 4, 5, 5. I mean, the fact that both kingdoms end with a volatile period of like messy or quick successions, that should help you, right? Remember, oh, there's like a cluster. In this case, Josiah is part of the last 5, but you have 5 here. I always remember shalom. That gets me started. Retribution, payback, right? God's payback. And each one of these has things that help you to remember. Remember what I said, Jeroboam 1 followed by strange fire. Remember he created those fake temples. Nadab and Abihu, sons of Aaron. He gets assassinated or bashed by Baasha. And he bashed him just like David bashed Goliath in the head in the valley of Elah, right? And then you got the Z, it jumps out. There aren't a lot of Z's, so it's like, Zedekiah, Zechariah, Zimri. Zimri is very similar to Omri, right? And Zimri ruled for how long? Creation week, right? 7 days, real 7 days. He reigned for a real creation week. It wasn't 7 billion years. And then the 4 and the 5. And I mean, Omri, once you get Omri, then I write Jehu, right? I create a box, 5, and I write Jehu. So I have Omri and Jehu, and then I might even write Shalom down here, and the Z, Zechariah, like, oh, there's a weird one. And then after Omri, Ahab is very, very memorable. Ahab, Ahaziah. How important is the name Ahaziah in the story? I mean, he's all over the place. And he's very memorable, very wicked. All the Ahaz and Ahaziahs are memorable. And then, I always couple Ahaziah with Jehoram. But it'll confuse you less if you link them to the group. Always remember Omri, Ahab. Yeah. Ahab, Ahaziah, right? Ahab comes first because he's the first son of Omri, the house of Omri. Something that's later for the advanced course. Right, Omri had a time where he had a rival who was trying to defeat him for power named Tibni. And Omri's the one, I'm adding something, you don't have to worry about this. It's like if someone wants to do a little extra credit there. Tibni was his rival, and he's the one who made Samaria, I think Tirzah was the capital, until he, like around 780, I think, made Samaria the capital. So Ahab is his famous son. And Ahab gives birth to Ahaziah, and always Ahaziah and Joram, or Jehoram, go together. Yeah. Yep. Almost positive, yes. Yeah, Jezebel, the Phoenician whore of Baal. She's the one who really ramped up the pagan Baal worship. Mount Carmel king, huh? Yep, she got. Yeah, if you're a Bible, what is it, Nebaoth or something? I forget. If you're a Bible guy, if you're passionate about the Word of God, you want to know and love your God, then.
Well, I think it's easier for the characters with the larger stories, but some of these kings only have like such a small.
Right. So that's why you do the list. The list puts them in between. Then after you get this, you can work on the dates. But there are certain pegs for the dates that make it easier. Like I always remember Isaiah and the throne room scene and King Uzziah. It says in there, Isaiah was called in the year that King Uzziah died, also known as Azariah. There's only a few of them where you have to know their other names. It doesn't hurt to know their other names, but like Jehoiachin is Jeconiah or Coniah. But it fits in the story. All right, so this is 740 BC when Uzziah dies and Isaiah starts. And then you learn about the dates of the prophets. You know, like you start to put the prophets next to the kings and think about, oh, what was the date of their ministry? What was the date of his reign? And also you'll learn that there overlap. It's called co-regency. What does regency mean? Like a reign, yeah. Regnum comes from Latin for king. Reign, think reign related to the word reign. Regency, a co-regency, means that there's overlap. Like a father, like Hezekiah, there was overlap with his father and then his son. So there might be a certain number of years. This accounts for some of the strange dating that seems to be in error. It's not in error in the Bible. There's just co-regencies where they overlap. And then eventually, like the advanced level, you start to try to memorize. Right? I don't even have all those overlaps, but I'm working on it. And you can get there. We can all get there together where we just, and the point isn't just to remember these things like we're going to go win Trivial Pursuit or like Jeopardy or something. Not that Jeopardy has anything good on it anymore. I used to love Jeopardy, by the way. I haven't seen it a lot lately, but I noticed they were watering it down. Jeopardy kind of reflects the intellectual level of the culture at the time. And when I was a kid, it was like, you know, what is the square root? Who discovered? Now it's like, what happened to Britney Spears when she went crazy? You know, it's sad. You know, like it tells you, like this is like the level, like what people, because they want the masses to be interested in it.
We're probably about now.
Yeah, we're down here on the timeline, right? Feels like it. I mean, this is all since Christ came and God openly judged the world at the cross in an inaugurated way, right? He ushered in the last days. So it should feel like, you know, these are the last days. I mean, the Lord is coming back to consummate his kingdom and to consummate the judgment and also the blessing, right? The blessing. And so we look to him as our blessed hope. And for the final form of his kingdom.